The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Joe Burrow has made his stance on Tee Higgins very clear.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
James Adam Schefter is calling the Bengals the most interesting team to watch this offseason.
Agreed.
And the Tee Higgins topic and the Trey Hendrickson topic and the Jamar Chase extension, which needs to get done sooner than later, are all things that make the Bengals interesting to watch this offseason. And like I said at the top, our position is pretty clear. This is an exploratory episode. This is a, what if they decide to move on from Tee Higgins? What does that look like? Because just, again, to be clear about it, and you can reiterate your preference as well, extending Tee Higgins still makes sense to the host of this podcast.
Yeah, Tee Higgins should be a top priority. And as we record this, February 11th, we are T-minus 1 week, Jake. Let's go 1 week away from the franchise tag window opening up. And that will be a 2-week window where the Bengals can place the franchise tag on Tee Higgins. That is key. That is very important. And I know some are going to say, do not tag T again. To me, that is going to tell us a lot about this situation, because I think it's going to be hard for Tee Higgins, knowing the teams that are interested in him, to not want to look at the market. Like, I know it's easy for us to say, get the deal done, get the deal done. But Tee Higgins is a month away from free agency. He can get to free agency, even though he wants to be in Cincinnati and loves Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Of course, he's going to want to test the market. And I've said this. I think if he gets to the market, you're talking 32, 33, 34, 35 million per. I think he gets a lot of money, and more money than people expect, which means he will not return to Cincinnati. The Bengals can sort of prevent that from happening, where they're out of, they can assume some control, at least some negotiating power, by tagging Tee Higgins. And we'll see if they do that. If they do, $26.17 million or so on that franchise tag. So it could be as early as a week from today, Jake, when we learn that the Bengals are franchise tagging Tee Higgins. And then from February 18th to March 4th. It's a 2-week window there. I know it feels like more days, but there's less days in March. A 2-week window where franchise tags can be placed on stars like Tee Higgins.
Less days in February, of course. Let's talk about the likelihood of the tag on Tee Higgins before we talk about what that would mean. Because there are cap implications. There are what the Bengals plan to do implications, and it would give us some hints about what the thought process is. And you could extrapolate from a decision to tag him or not tag him. It may not happen on the first day of the franchise tag window. This time around, maybe they open the conversation with T by saying, hey, let's avoid the franchise tag. Let's see if we can get this done without a franchise tag first, and then hold that in their back pocket and say, well, we're not going to let you walk for free. Maybe we'll trade you, but we're going to put the tag on you eventually. So before we get to those details around the franchise tag, as you allude to, the big number and cap hit attached to it, what do you think the likelihood is that is the eventual path the Bengals choose?
I think it's interesting that you just brought that up, like them possibly waiting, because in that 2-week window is the NFL Combine.
Mm-hmm.
And last year they tagged him before Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor, and everyone talked publicly, talked privately. And if you're the Bengals and you want to at least explore the idea of trading T, maybe you wait to place the tag and just have those conversations. Maybe you hammer out a trade at the Combine. I think that's pretty unlikely for the Bengals, even though trades happen all the time. Deals are negotiated at the Combine all the time. So I do think that that's a wrinkle. To me, there's two things here, and it kind of goes to the communication side of it as well. Do they just straight up tag T like they did last year, where I think they were like, tag, you're it, and there was no negotiation at all?
Yeah.
Or is the communication there where it's like, look, T, we want you, we want to work out a long-term deal, this is a formality. We're placing this tag on you because obviously we're not going to let you get to free agency because we want you here long term. And by placing this tag on you, we want to sign you to a long-term deal. Or is it the cold shoulder? Kind of like last year. And I'm not saying they're wrong for that last year, but where they were like, tag him and that's it. I mean, a lot of people criticize them for that, but I really don't think that they planned on keeping T beyond 2024. That's why they used the tag. And now they look and they're like, we have money to spend. This free agency class sucks. And there's and we'll get into this. It's not like there's a bunch of other Tee Higginses available in free agency. So it all signs point to that. So I do think that there's a lot of factors. I would be surprised if they did not franchise tag T. And to take it a step farther, Jake, I would be really critical of them if we're talking 3 weeks from now and Tee Higgins isn't franchise tagged and set to test the market, because I think there is a 0.0% chance he comes back to Cincinnati if he hits free agency. He'll get wooed too much. It's one of those things where I think the money, the opportunity, the wine and dining, I don't think, and by the way, I don't mean in-person wine and dining. I mean oh my God, T, you're so great. Here's $33 million per year. I mean, who knows what is thrown at him guaranteed dollars wise if he hits free agency.
And it happened in the season on Hard Knocks. Mike Tomlin started it. We saw it. I mean, we know.
Yeah.
There are teams that covet Tee Higgins. There are teams in the division. There are teams in the AFC. There are teams that you do not want to employ Tee Higgins if you're a Bengals fan that will try to obtain his services for sure. I think that the most important thing you point out there is, like, if the Bengals don't tag Tee Higgins, that is probably an indication that he is going to go test the open market. So they have to tag Tee Higgins if they want to get anything for Tee Higgins. If they want to try to keep Tee Higgins, I think that the tag is necessary. I think that, to your point, they need to have those conversations so that it's not like, hey, we're going to tag you and you're going to play the tag and we're not going to talk to your agent because we can't talk to David Mulligetta. Hopefully they can work with Rocky Arsenault as they try to figure out the deals for Jamar Chase and for Tee Higgins. And that, I think, was the expectation when T switched agents, and hopefully they're prepared for the idea that the franchise tag is coming. And there is a cost to the Bengals for taking that approach, even if they do work out a long-term deal that I want to explore as well. But it looks like you have something you're eager to add.
Yeah, I just tell them today. Let's not pretend like they don't know.
Yeah.
They know today.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think they know today? I mean,
yeah.
It's been weeks since we've talked about this how long? And it's not like we're recording for 22 hours a day. This is their job. Like, they have to know if they're tagging T, right? By now. So just tell them.
Yep.
So I'm just saying, you could give them a heads up well ahead of time. Hey, T, we're going to tag you. It's a formality. We want to keep you long term.
And maybe they have, but given what we've heard about the way this front office communicates, that would be something that I don't think you can safely assume.
No,
let's say.
I would say that's fair.
Let's
not assume.
Let's be somewhat kind about this. Coming up next, let's talk about some of the implications of the franchise tag and what that means about the way the Bengals have to approach this offseason and when decisions have to be made, as there is a financial cost to the franchise tag, even if they are working on an extension that would incentivize the Bengals to move quickly on this.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Imagine going to the big game this Sunday. That's what a lot of the people around me here on Radio Row are going to do, and the fans who are coming to New Orleans. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have time searching. Inspiration makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and take the work on ticket. Gametime. Download Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
$15 million a year for James Cook.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast.
We've got a lot to get into. Let's start with this James Cook conversation. Dan says, would love to hear your thoughts on the James Cook $15 million live pinned comment, and also your thoughts on using him in a trade package for a premier defensive lineman if they believe he is going to hold out this summer for a deal they're not willing to pay. So what Dan is referring to is, I think it was on Wednesday, James Cook did an Instagram live and put 15 million and pinned it to a comment. And it's certainly him coming out and stating that that's the dollar amount he's looking for in a contract extension. And my first thought on this is, I don't really recall a Bills player recently having an open negotiation through social media for their contract extension. So this is definitely a new thing for Brandon Beane to deal with. We've certainly had players that you knew there were dynamics with the contract, whether that was Jordan Poyer or even Stephon Diggs, but to come out and really get specific with dollar amounts, that's new. That's new for this regime. And I'm sure that is what he wants, right? It's also a negotiation, so it's him putting his cards on the table, but you don't know where it's going to land. So I'm sure he's looking for every dollar he can get. And I'd expect for him to try to get the most money that he can. He's obviously had a really good start to his career, 2 great seasons in a row, ton of touchdowns this past year. Young running back. There's obviously a lot of conversations about the running back market and how it needs to accelerate, and I get it. I understand all those conversations. But I also don't think that's a fair amount for James Cook. And I'm going to really flesh this out in a Substack article, the Herd Mentality Substack. I'm going to aim to put that out today. I've been working on it, and, of course, I thought I was going to get ahead of this conversation, but James Cook puts that on his Instagram Live, and all of a sudden it is an accelerated conversation. So I'll share a whole lot more in the article. If you'd like to be part of the Herd Mentality Substack, there's a link in today's show notes to check that out. But I think there's a lot of dynamics in play that need to be considered for both sides to land at a fair number. And I think there's 3 things working against James Cook. Obviously, he's a good young player that's ascending, that has been productive. He's been durable. He's got a lot going for him. So let's not overlook that. But I think when you consider the reasons why $15 million is just not a fair dollar amount for the Bills, well, James Cook's not a third down running back, right? The Bills have Ty Johnson as their third down back. He's not the closer. So end of halves, he's not on the field. They leave that to Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. And overall, he's just a 45% of the snaps guy, talking about a half the time back. And the highly paid running backs in the NFL, who are Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, and Alvin Kamara, those 4 guys, those are your top 4 in APY. They're on the field 75 to 80% of snaps. They are the third down backs. They are the closer. They are the high volume of the snap guys. And James Cook's not that player. He's not CMC, Saquon Barkley, or Jonathan Taylor. And that doesn't mean he's not a really good player. I think James Cook's a very good player. But I think he's seeking a dollar amount that pays him like a running back that simply he's not. And so I think this could get sticky. I think there's obviously some influence from his brother, Dalvin Cook, and probably feeling like there was some opportunity and some money left on the table at the end of his career. And so it's very unique. And I'll tell you this, I am very much open to a trade. If he's a valuable asset that helps the Bills acquire a big-time defensive lineman, if it's a player, you get a meaningful draft pick, I'm open to that, because I don't think you want to lose James Cook for nothing, or hope to get a compensatory pick in a few years. But I do think that $15 million is not a fair amount. It's just not. He wants to get paid like he's Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor. Well, those guys play 20, 30% more snaps than you do. because they're trusted to be on the field on passing downs and at the end of halves. That's just not who James Cook's proven to be, and I don't think that's a fair amount. And again, look, dude, go get your money, do your thing, market yourself. I don't take any exception with that, but I don't find $15 million to be a fair number for James Cook relative to the running back market. James says, you mentioned that the Bills typically start slowly in games, but adjust well by the third quarter. Why do you think they start slowly? Inadequate game planning, something else? What do you think they can do to turn this around and start faster in the first quarter? So let's clarify something here. The Bills' defense starts slow. The offense doesn't. The offense is terrific. If you look at the offensive EPA per play, per quarter, in the first quarter, it's fifth. In the second quarter, it's third. In the third quarter, it's third. In the fourth quarter, it's seventh. The offense is good from start to finish. Defensively, not so much. First quarter, EPA per play on defense, 29th. Second quarter, 21st. Third quarter, drum roll, first. And in the fourth quarter, it's 16th. So this is really a problem for the defense. And if you had to ask me why I think this is the case, I think there is a feeling out process early in games. And you're curious to see how an offense is going to attack your defense. You want to find what the tells are and make your adjustments. And I think the Bills want to find out those tells, live with it, and adjust. I think that's kind of what they want to do. But I also think that and I've heard this from some sources, that the Bills do want to come out and play fast on defense. And so they simplify things so that their players aren't thinking as much. Just stay true to your rules and play fast. And I think that's kind of backfired on them. And I think they do need to anticipate how teams are going to come out and attack them early and have some better answers earlier in games. And this is going to be, and already has been this offseason, a big talking point for me. And it's that there's a big time correlation between halftime leads and winning football games in any given year. 75 to 80% of the time, the team that is leading at halftime wins the game. That's big time. That's correlation for sure. And so, yeah, the Bills need to play better early in games, particularly on defense, to give themselves a better chance of winning even more. Obviously, they're a great team. They win a lot of football games. But when you look at the ones that they don't, it's because they start slow and can't overcome it. You look at the actual 4 losses that they had, the Chiefs in the championship game, Rams, Texans, Ravens. Every single one of those games, the Bills were down by 2 scores in the first half and trailed at halftime, and they lost the game. All right, well, figure that out. Andrew says, I've seen tweets suggesting that if another team hires Terrence Gray, we will receive a compensatory draft pick. Could you explain why that might be the case? Also, what is the total number of compensatory picks awarded across the league each year? Appreciate your insights into compensatory picks, as this is a confusing topic. All right, so let me add what I can here. Terrence Gray is in the Bills front office, and he's a candidate for the GM job with the Jaguars. And if he were to be hired, the Bills would receive 2 third-round picks. And so why is that the case? Well, there was a resolution in 2020 that if a minority employee is hired by another team to either be a head coach or a general manager, the team that they were hired away from gets a 3rd-round compensatory draft pick in each of the next 2 drafts. So if the Bills were to lose Terrence Gray to be the general manager of the Jaguars, they get a 3rd-round pick this year. They get a 3rd-round pick next year. That's what would happen. And as far as total compensatory picks, there's 32, up to 32 compensatory picks awarded every single year. No team can have more than 4, but that does not include this deal where if you lose a minority person, whether it's a front office person or a coach that becomes a GM or a head coach, that doesn't factor in. In fact, last year there were 34 compensatory picks awarded because of this. And so we should know for sure the compensatory picks that are awarded sometime in mid-March. The Bills are expected to get some compensatory picks for losing Leonard Floyd and Gabe Davis. Potentially a couple of 5th-round picks is what the expectation is there. But we'll know for sure in about a month.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Imagine going to the big game this Sunday. That's what a lot of the people around me here on Radio Row are going to do, and the fans who are coming to New Orleans. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have time searching. Inspiration makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and take the work on tickets. Gametime. Download Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time.
The Jets need a new starting quarterback with Aaron Rodgers on his way out of town.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast.
The team reportedly is moving on from Aaron Rodgers. Jay Glazer of Fox Sports first reported it on Super Bowl Sunday that the Jets plan to proceed in 2025 without Aaron Rodgers. So who's going to replace him? That's the topic of today's show. And some of the early reports have suggested that a logical candidate for the Jets might be somebody who's already on the team, and that is Tyrod Taylor, who served as the Jets' backup quarterback in the year 2024. And unlike 2023, the Jets' backup quarterback in 2024 did not get much action. In 2023, the Jets were playing backup quarterbacks all but 4 plays, from Zach Wilson to Tim Boyle to Trevor Siemian. In 2024, the backup quarterback was Tyrod Taylor. The Jets invested heavily at the backup quarterback position last offseason, in part because of what happened in 2023. Taylor got a deal which comes with big guarantees for 2 years, and the Jets really did not need him all that much. He played some mop-up duty against San Francisco. He played some mop-up duty against Buffalo, and led 3 touchdown drives. So he played pretty well in that mop-up duty against prevent defenses, facing backups on the defensive side of the ball. Would Tyrod Taylor make a logical choice to start for the Jets since he's already on the team? And a lot of people are saying yes. A lot of people are speculating, and it's really speculation at this point. Nobody knows for sure what the Jets are going to do at the quarterback position. He's the guy that's getting a lot of buzz right now just because he's on the team. But I would really question the viability of Tyrod Taylor being a starting quarterback in the league for the Jets or for any other team in the year 2025. What I would say is that the player Tyrod Taylor was 8 years ago would be a perfect stopgap quarterback for the New York Jets, because in his 3-year career with the Buffalo Bills from 2015 through 2017, he showed an ability to run an offense competently. He protected the football well. He has very low interception rates. He played pretty efficient ball. He was able to avoid mistakes. He was able to make some plays with his legs. The Bills actually made the playoffs in one of those 3 years. Taylor was the quintessential game manager. It's a phrase that's overused frequently, but he's exactly what you wanted. He was not a guy who was going to make an offense better, but if you put good pieces around him, he could make it work. That was a really long time ago. Tyrod Taylor, over the last 7 seasons, has started a grand total of 15 games. Tyrod Taylor has not started more than 6 games in the season since the year 2017. 2017 was the last time he was a full-time starter. He was 28 that year. He's going to be 36 this year. And I really question the idea that he's a viable starting quarterback going forward. Now, what I would say is that for the 2024 Jets, he was a guy who made a tremendous amount of sense. Now, a lot of people saw what happened in 2023 when Aaron Rodgers goes down on the first drive of the season, and they said, well, the Jets need a better backup quarterback. And those people were right. The reality is that if Aaron Rodgers went down the first game of the season again, the Jets season would have been over in 2024. And I mean, look, it may not have been much worse because we all know what happened, but getting the backup quarterback is usually not about, surviving a full season without your starter. I mean, look, there are moments where it happens. Yesterday's show, I talked to there were some examples where the Rams in 1999 lost Trent Green in the preseason, and Kurt Warner stepped in because Kurt Warner was the backup, went on to win the MVP in the Super Bowl that year. 2 years later, Drew Bledsoe got injured. Tom Brady was the backup. He came in and led the Patriots to the Super Bowl. But most teams don't have a future Hall of Famer secretly lurking on the bench as the backup quarterback. What you're usually looking for is somebody who can get you through a couple games if your quarterback gets hurt. You'd love to have somebody who's a viable starter. You'd love to have 2 viable starting quarterbacks, but most teams are lucky to have 1. What you're looking for in a backup quarterback, again, someone to get you through a medium stretch. So if Rodgers had suffered like a 2 to 3 game injury, Maybe Tyrod could run the offense effectively. You're looking for somebody who got enough skills where you can build a limited game plan around them for a couple of weeks. But if they're out there any longer, defenses are going to catch up to them, and their flaws will get exposed. Somebody talented enough where you can hide their flaws and accentuate their positives for a couple weeks. But any more than that is really a bonus. And the Jets did need to get a veteran. And it's not because Zach Wilson was a young quarterback and failed in 2023. There was a very specific reason the Jets needed to get a quarterback with experience. And that's because of what they did with their coaching position on the offensive side of the ball. They brought Nathaniel Hackett back. And in 2023, there's no polite way to say this, so I'll just say it the way it is. In 2023, Nathaniel Hackett seemed to feel like his job was not to run the Jets offense. He felt like his job was just Aaron Rodgers does whatever. And once Aaron Rodgers went down, there was no adjustment. Essentially, Zach Wilson, you're on your own. And there are lots of reasons Zach Wilson struggled. I think we know that, he's really at that point of his career was not up to being a starting quarterback. We'll see what happens with a couple of years on the bench, maybe playing with Sean Payton in Denver. But he needed help from his offensive coordinator. He needed an offensive coordinator who would draw things into play designs that would help simplify coverages, help force the defense to give away keys. And Nathaniel Hackett showed no interest in doing that. Nathaniel Hackett, and this is true of Robert Saleh, also is true of the whole Jets coaching staff. When Aaron Rodgers went down, they threw up their arms and said, "Well, what do you expect us to do? Do you think we're going to try? How can you expect us to try and win without Aaron Rodgers?" And if you're going to take that attitude, and look, I mean, I know that's not a polite thing to say, but the results speak for themselves. The reports that have come out speak for themselves. They didn't think they really. Essentially, Nathaniel Hackett thought his job was to defer to Aaron Rodgers, and when Aaron Rodgers was out, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do any more work. So if you're going to have that attitude, you need a veteran in there. If Aaron Rodgers goes down, you need somebody who knows how to get you into the right play. You need somebody who knows how to make a pre-snap read on defense and change the play if necessary. You need somebody who can get you into the right protection if the other team shows blitz. So for that situation, Tyrod Taylor made a lot of sense because he was exactly what the Jets needed for that role in 2024. In 2025, it's not so much that it's not even so much that Tyrod Taylor, shouldn't be the starting quarterback, because again, this is a guy who hasn't been a starting quarterback since 2017, and we're going to be in 2025 this year. Last time he was a starting quarterback, he was 28. This year he's going to be 36. Now suddenly 8 years later, we're not going to show any signs of rust. We're not going to show any signs of decline. Kind of tough to believe. But even going beyond that, going a little deeper, I don't know the Jets necessarily have as big of a need this year for a quarterback who can get you through 2 to 3 games, because this is not a team that's really focused on winning the Super Bowl. It's a team that, of course, is going to go all out to win games, going to do everything in their power to try and have a successful season. I think they have a better shot at having a successful season than people realize. But I don't know if Tyrod Taylor is really that essential to keep on the team, much less as a starting quarterback. And I want to say this respectfully, because by all accounts, Tyrod Taylor is a very good veteran presence to have in the locker room. And if you want to keep him, maybe that's the argument for it, is that, on a team that probably will be getting younger, a team that will be trying to bring some younger guys along, maybe Tyrod Taylor's leadership could be beneficial. So I'm not saying Tyrod Taylor has to go, but I would say that Tyrod Taylor's utility to the Jets in 2025 is much less than it was in 2024. And I would say that it's very difficult for me to conceive of a rationale where Tyrod Taylor should enter 2025 as the starting quarterback, because there are no great options for the Jets. But that said, there are better options than a guy who hasn't been a full-time starter in 8 years.